That's why I have a hard time with people who only want to identify themselves as a triathlete, because that is like less than 5% of who you really are. And I think when people start to identify themselves as I'm a triathlete or I'm an Ironman athlete, then anytime what your life is asking of you at that moment, you now feel like you've lost some of that identity. I've seen people even post about it, like sometimes they'll just sign up for it, like clicking register, even if they know they can't train for it appropriately, is basically it's like renewing your membership.
Yeah.
I gotta renew this year, baby. I gotta renew my Ironman membership. I gotta be back in it. Hey, happy Thursday.
All right, if you say so.
Man, you seem to have already caught some of like the winter doldrums already.
No, I'm back on my medication.
Hope that medication includes sunshine and running outside.
Oh, it includes sunny sunshine
and brisk walks with Maddie.
Yeah, well, maybe. Yeah, a little bit of that.
It doesn't sound like it. But hey, you know what it does sound like? It sounds like episode 321. Welcome aboard, Crushing Iron Podcast. Thank you for joining us. If it's your first time listening, we appreciate you tuning in and giving us the time. And if you're a repeat listener, we value you as always. We are a predominantly triathlon podcast, but we cover all things triathlon life, training, how they intersect, intertwine, how they affect our lives, both positively and negatively. And then we spend our podcast hopefully just having an open conversation about things that we're going through as both coaches and athletes, what we see are the athletes we work with going through, and then even oftentimes some of the discussions we see in our closed Facebook group. That's Crushing Iron Group if you want to pop in there, and we will let you in. And so we do our best to do that. We hope you take something from it. And again, if it's your first time, go back. We got 320 episodes back in the archives. We've been doing this for what is now over 3 years, which is kind of crazy to think about. And that's all I got.
Yeah, we go way back, man. You and I talking triathlon.
We do go
back to the above ground pool days.
Way back. Yeah, people. If people thought our podcast was mediocre already, then thank God they weren't able to tune into the discussions we would have in the above ground pool at your house back in the.
Oh God.
Yeah. That'd be bad for business. But anyway, let me ask you this: Are you in a training funk? No? It's
just been cold. I've been busy.
I know it's been cold.
I've been kind of just trying to channel I got, the run camp was solid and I felt good about it, and I've just been trying to channel my energy into work here for a few days. So, I think
a few days? How about the last month?
Well, that too. But really kind of bearing down and going a little bit more. I have been doing that.
Do you feel like it's been hard for you? Obviously, again, if it's your first time listening, like Mike did Ironman Wisconsin with a bunch of other athletes, which is early September, and while that probably seems like for most athletes it was 9 months ago, it was 7-8 weeks ago, and so it really isn't that like far removed from athletes being in like a really, really great shape and in a routine and focused on this one thing and pouring ourselves in this mission, for lack of a better term, of doing the training that we need to do, focusing on it day in and day out, letting other things kind of not really subside, but definitely take a back seat, and you kind of take on this personality of what you're trying to do and get done, and then it's over, and then other things get put in the back. Like training might get put in the back seat, other things in life, like for you right now, and the same way it's been for me, is for work, gets put in the front seat, and I think it's hard to find the good balance between the two of these. I was reading through. I'm not on Instagram, but I'm on Twitter, and I was reading through like a Rich Roll comment thing, and apparently he's going like dead silence for like 5 weeks. No work at all. He was listing out like in the past like 7 or 8 years, he's never taken really a day off, never taken a vacation that wasn't like, obviously he's traveled, but it's always been work related. and I can relate to that to some extent. Like I've taken, I think, like 1 or 2 quote unquote vacations, but I say I'm out of the office and I find myself still working. Obviously, you wouldn't change it for the world, but he was like, I need to like step back and understand that like while I love working, he said one comment to me that I found was interesting and that I can relate to this 100%. And he was like, if I wasn't married and had kids, I would work more. And he said that was actually like a warning sign to him that he needed to find a better balance and do self-care. So apparently he's been like working, like burning the wick at both ends, trying to get all these podcasts and all his work done so he can like totally 100% not touch work or email for 5 weeks and just totally like unplug. And he was just talking about how absolutely scary that was for him to do. I know it would be. I'm having like a panic attack right now thinking about it. Like I have a cup of coffee in my hand, but I'm afraid to drink it because it's gonna like make my heart race even more. Like I can't fathom like not looking in Training Peaks for like a week, and like what I would find when I came back. And so like 5 weeks is just like that. I don't know how you're gonna do it. But I applaud him. But
it's pretty incredible, man.
I mean, he hasn't done it yet, but
well, the thought of
it. And I was just kind of going back to what you've been kind of going through here lately with focusing so much on work, and I do the same thing, and how sometimes I think we can get wrapped up so much in these goals, and then we find it. Because listen, like training is taking care of ourselves, right? Like if we're doing it the right way, it's supposed to take care of ourselves. It's supposed to treat, and we're treating ourselves with respect. Hopefully, we're increasing our health. We're making ourselves more fit. We're allowing ourselves opportunity to race. We feel good about ourselves. It should be adding all these positives. But I think sometimes what we forget too is like when that can be removed, or if you go through an injury, or you get really sick, or work takes over your life, or you have a kid, or you get married, anything that's like a huge life event or a different focus that takes, again, like we talk about this all the time on the podcast, is like stress is stress and energy is energy, and you only have so much, and there's only so much to go around before you kind of feel like you're spread too thin. And sometimes you kind of have to reorganize your life, and I think it takes a huge adjustment period to kind of feel comfortable sitting in that new arrangement. And I didn't know if that's something that you had were going through, or I know a lot of athletes are, in terms of just kind of being okay with how people are moving and getting married, and getting new jobs, and just there's so much unearthing of responsibilities and focus that doesn't involve triathlon, that sometimes we kind of find it hard to settle back into a groove and kind of find our place.
Yeah, I do find it difficult, but I think one of the things that I've tried to do, and don't get me wrong, it still produces tremendous amounts of guilt, but like I've always had this in my mind, the idea of designing a lifestyle. I think I coined that term about 25 years ago, but I haven't gotten credit for it. But that's something I really wanted to do, and I feel like we're kind of doing it. And the question becomes, what that means to me, sort of essentially, is you just live. You don't work 9 to 5. You don't work Monday through Friday. You just kind of do stuff all the time. Maybe like hunter-gatherer. You know what I mean? Like It really is sort of that mentality, rather than, oh, here's the weekend, I can go hunt 180 the other way and be a different person. Then I got to recalibrate and come back and sit down and work on Monday through Friday and hate it from Wednesday on and whatever. So I've always tried to do that. But you talk about balance, and it's weird finding that balance. And for me, a lot of times it's because of external factors. Because of, I could do it, but I feel like everybody around me, there's like just, it's not a traditional way to think about stuff or something. And it feels weird sometimes. Like when like if I get a lot of shit for sleeping in, or like at run camp, you're a sleeper, like.
Hey, listen, we get made fun of on both ends of the stick.
Oh, for sure we do.
Like you waking up early, and then I get ribbed big time for wanting to go to bed at like 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock, or I haven't pulled like a turn that music down to run camp. I mean, to be honest, it was a little bit too loud. But then I wake up the next morning, go downstairs and get coffee, and I'm all alone.
Yeah.
And so I get that.
Yeah. It's weird. Yeah, when I'm up late, I'm all alone and stuff like that. So, but for me, in a way, I think sometimes I don't know if it's just it's probably a lot of factors, including diet and all kinds of things that I go through these Ironman trainings. I think I'm not unique, but for me, the deep fatigue is, I kind of, in some ways, it feels it's been lingering. And the last time I talked about this idea of kind of the energy it takes to get out of your rut, and to try to kind of, move yourself over about 20 feet and go down a different hill or a different part of the snow. And it takes a lot of energy. So that's why I've been trying to, because I really want to, there's a lot of things I want to do with C26 and Crushing Iron and the website and all kinds of video stuff and all that sort of stuff. And to even have those thoughts of big designs like that is an incredible amount of energy suck, because you're dragged around. You know how you do it. You get bounced around. You get on. You start doing one project, and the next thing you're another, and the next thing you know, you're buried again. And I think that training for Ironman can bury you on one end, and then you're trying to do all the other stuff. So just to keep up for me is always kind of a challenge. But anyway, the designing a lifestyle is sort of like I'm trying to find that sweet spot of, just kind of being. Sometimes I work, sometimes I don't. It's like I don't work 9 to 5. I work 9 to 11,
Yeah,
and then
I work 7 to 5. You work 6 to 4 a.m. and we pretty much cover the 24-hour shift.
It's pretty close.
Yeah, definitely.
In some ways. So, like, that's sort of it. Or I'll take a couple hours here, a couple hours there, and I think those are good things. It's just hard to get used to it, because that's not how we're sort of brought up.
Right. I think for a lot of people, triathlon, and like when they get very intense with it, they don't know how to do it. It's like relationships, honestly, like, because everyone has a relationship with training, and it looks very, very different for a lot of people. Some people have a very serious relationship. Some people, it's all about fun. It's about routine. It's about getting the job done. Other people, it's goal and performance oriented. And other people, obviously, it's kind of a mixture of it all. But in terms of making the analogy between that and relationships, it's like the person who can't just date casually and date maybe multiple people, which, nothing wrong with that, but has to like go all in and this has to be like a long-term relationship. Like, this has to be serious, and doesn't kind of can go on one date and they're like, I think I'm in love. This is it. And you're like, dude, you were in love like 5 times last year. Are you sure this is the kind of the route we want to go here? But in
that
terms
happened to
of
me in reverse about a month. It really did.
We'll launch that in a bonus cast here later. But I think it takes some getting accustomed to, in terms of being in this long-term kind of training relationship. Then you get out of it and you're like, it's still a part of me, but it's not driving the train. And how am I supposed to like rearrange things, and how am I supposed to think objectively and then keep making the right decisions every day? It's like you break up with triathlon or training for a little bit because you need to take a break, or you're focusing on work like you and I are doing, or you moved and you got a new job, and you recognize it takes a back seat. But I'll be honest with you, and I told us on the podcast a month or two ago, I was taking a break from racing, and you know how many times I've thought over the last like 3 weeks about signing up for a race?
Not many?
Every day.
Oh, have you?
every single day. Well, because it's like triathlon is my life. Like, just because I'm not like specifically training for a race, it's 100% my life. Like, it is this podcast. It is the conversations that I have via text message or phone call or Skype. It is what I plan day in and day out for training for the athletes that I work with. It is the research and the reading that I do. Like, it is all triathlon. And so you see these races and you track people, and then they compete, and you kind of get this like itch. You're like, oh, dude, I think I'm gonna do it. And then I kind of like take a step back and look at my life. I'm like, no, you can't. Like, you can do a lot of things halfway and be mediocre at it, but so I'm still like having a hard time identifying with not. And I think
what do you think about, like, a full or a half, or does it matter?
Like, I'm all in, baby, 100%, like all in, like triathlon, like give me an Ironman, like, and that's, of course, that's idiotic for me right now, because like, you're doing this in like, and I can't wait, like, for those of you, 9 of you listening right now, and for the 2 of you that have been to our current website at crushingiron.com, Mike has been, as he said, has been working feverishly on this new website, and having been able to see all of it, and even last night, it's going to blow your mind. It is.
That's not under promising.
Well, I'm just being honest. Sometimes I think it's okay to be honest. It's awesome. It's you've done an awesome job, and then we've also got a physical hub that we're opening, a training center, if you will, for our athletes in Chattanooga that we're hoping to open in May. So like we both have like a ton of things going on, and so when I think about all the things that I want to do, and then I look at the travel and all the commitments, it's like you got to stay focused, and you kind of get deterred by like the life that you may have had like a year and a half ago. And then you're like, that doesn't look. But I love the life that I have right now. I think sometimes these voices come in, and I think the reason I haven't pulled the trigger and signed up for a race is because I still haven't gotten to the point to where I'm like, all right, you don't really need to have to do a full. You can just do a 70.3 and you'll be just fine. Because that type of training actually might fit into your lifestyle. Like that might be attainable. You could still be competitive. You can still perform the way you want to, but I haven't done either because I'm still having a hard time. Like when you hit the register button, no matter what it is, you're committing, and you want to commit with the feeling like you're being propelled towards something that's very successful, and the opportunity to succeed in the way you want to, in the manner in which you prepare and you train and you prioritize your life and you use your time management. And like you want to feel set up for success. And I know that if I signed up for something, outside of a 70.3 or shorter, then I would be setting myself up for failure. And so I haven't done anything in terms of signing up for anything, and I don't know when or if I will the next time. But it is. I think it's in a hard. It's definitely not an identity crisis, but I think it's if it's when it's been your way of life. I think it's, and again, like this is on point for anyone, whether it's refocusing on work or or even just self-care. Like I think a lot of us forget that self-care, if you do endurance sports, like doesn't always have to involve your sport. Like there are so many other ways. Like for me, like at run camp, that was self-care for me. Like, we got to drop our toddler off at the in-laws, which was number one self-care. And then spend 3 days with my wife, and then a bunch of like great friends and some of my best friends, and just totally unplug and like hang out with people and talk and just kind of, you got responsibilities because I'm working technically, but like outside of that, it's nice to just kind of take care of yourself. And that's kind of how I saw it. And I think sometimes we forget that in order to really take care of ourselves in the way that we need to, so we can do the things that we want to later down the road, you have to set yourself up for success mentally and emotionally to be able to perform physically. And I think when people go through, again, like this time of year is hard enough on people, I think, because of for some reason the holidays are always really hard on people. And then the weather, the cold weather, the cloudy skies, the cooler temps, the darkness that seems to be like 18 hours of the day affects people and affects their moods, and then they don't want to do things. They don't want to be outside. They don't want to be active, and then it makes them feel worse. And so they enter this cycle, and then you have a lot of people going through a lot of transitional changes in life. And I think it's hard when you've identified as again, like that's why I have a hard time with people who only want to identify themselves as a triathlete. Because that is like less than 5% of who you really are. And I think when people start to identify themselves as I'm a triathlete or I'm an Ironman athlete, then anytime what your life is asking of you at that moment, you now feel like you've lost some of that identity. And you see that all the time. Like, and people, I think even I've seen people even post about it. Like sometimes they'll just sign up for it. Like, clicking register, even if they know they can't train for it appropriately, is basically, it's like renewing your membership.
Yeah.
I gotta renew this year, baby. I gotta renew my Ironman membership. I gotta be back in it. And this around this time of year too, like athletes that I train that do races, and they're like, hey, I don't know what my year next year is going to look like. It's already been crazy. I definitely can't do a 70.3 interval. I might just run, or I might just ride, or I might do this. Can we do that? I'm like, yeah, absolutely. Like I always consider myself to train athletes. I like to train people who like to do athletic things. And so whatever type of athlete you want to be, that's how we'll train, not just being a triathlete, And I think that, again, when you start to identify yourself and associating yourself with that kind of a label, then you all of a sudden you can't do it. And I think that's one of the biggest focuses that you kind of have to have.
Yeah, I'm totally with you.
It's I mean, do you find yourself like, because I think a lot of people do this in terms of in every aspect of their life, like when we, and I think as a society we do this, when we commit, we have to go all in.
Yeah.
There is no like in between. There is no just getting your feet wet. It's I'm going all in. I am going to buy every single thing that I need to be like January 1st. Hello, we're going to have like people are going to go to REI or some fitness store, and they're going to buy everything you can possibly imagine that's associated with getting in shape and losing weight. They're going to walk into GNC, they're going to walk into the vitamin shop, they're going to go on a line, and they're going to purchase like $500 worth of the nutritional items, and they're going to go all in. Because if you purchase things and you commit to things and you call yourself a thing, then you're all in. And we do this with politics and with especially with like diets. Like very rarely do you see people like jump from, I'm this specific. I'm a keto guy. I'm a low carb guy. I'm a high protein guy. I'm vegan. I'm vegetarian. Whatever it is, they usually bounce between like the labels, because I think people just in generally like to identify with things. It gives them a conversation starter, something to kind of be a part of, even if there's really nothing to be a part of. And I think that's the rub with triathlon sometimes, in terms of people who pretty much consider that the main portion of their life, in that if they don't do them, then they're kind of lost, or that they have to do them. Again, like what I said about like clicking register is like, renewing your membership is now or signing up for races. Now I have something to talk about. Now I have something to identify with, when a lot of times what you really need to do is go back and try to find out how you can kind of make things in your life a little more even, kind of like you said. You said like about kind of creating your own lifestyle. And a lot of times when you identify, you label something like being a triathlete or being an Ironman, that is now going to drive your lifestyle. You're going to make every decision that you make, whether it's going to social functions, what you eat, the vacations you take, where you go, how you train, who you train with. That's all going to be geared towards what you've identified yourself as or labeled yourself as. And when that drives the train, when you take away the conductor of that train, which is racing, or the amount of time that it takes, the energy it takes to train for something like that, then no one's left at the wheel. It's no wonder you feel kind of lost.
Yeah, for sure, man. I think about, because I played college baseball, and what I think a lot about is athletes that play college sports, high level, and how they relate to, they didn't go pro. So let's say you're a big-time college football player, and now you're not going pro. What are you going to do next? I mean, think about the identification with that. Like, you're walking around campus, big man on campus kind of thing all the time, and then one day it's just over. You can't sign up for the next race or whatever. So on a very, very small level, I went through some of that. And at least I played baseball, so I got to play super competitive softball for about 6 years after college, and that kind of scratched the itch a little bit. But then there was a void for my 30s, and I have also this artistic side that I picked up music, and I started playing drums at that age, late in my life, and it's not very easy to do stuff like that, but it was something I loved, and I kind of got into video and creative stuff like that. So I had that side of me too. And then one time, like when I started this triathlon process, I'll never forget it. I did a sprint. My first one was a sprint, and like the picture after the race, I posted it, and my buddy from up north goes, "Man, that's the happiest I've seen you look in ages." And I was like, man, it really took me back. And it was like, it's because I'm sort of athletically driven, or I have that in my DNA sort of, and I think that was just it. It was just sort of this high that I hadn't felt in such a long time. And so now, though, in a weird way, back to the thought. The other day I was talking about that brain surgeon guy, and he was talking about why they said he got asked what was the most important thing for your brain, and he said exercise. And I was like, whoa. I mean, like without it, he said, food came in there or whatever, but he said without a doubt it's exercise. He said because really what the brain is just sort of this floating bunch of membranes, and it's in soup and all this stuff like that. And what you do when you exercise is you take care of the plumbing. It opens up everything, and it moves better and everything like that. So I think they're talking about Alzheimer's or something like that. But
yeah.
Anyway, So to your point is like, yeah, what is my balance? So that's I find it. How do you? I love doing the website stuff and videos and the creative side of things like that. And I also am very athletic, so I'm trying to, it's almost like one gets shut off or you can't get focused. And sometimes that's one of the slippery slopes for me to walk is like I have to go all in on Ironman training, or I kind of have to go all in on the future, the business type stuff.
The future. I have to go all in on the future.
These nice damn responsibilities. I can't just be a kid and run around all the time. Be a kid.
But is that so? Let me ask you this: Is it because I kind of go through this a lot, and triathlon is a lot the same way in terms of balancing the swim, bike, run, and the demands of those three sports and disciplines within and how they affect each other. And you got to balance like your strengths and weaknesses. You definitely want to make sure you're maximizing your strengths. You definitely want to make sure you're taking care of and strengthening your weaknesses to where they all kind of balance out. But that also means that sometimes if you're a very, very weak cyclist, sometimes the amount of run volume and swimming you do needs to be cut back so you can actually take steps forward in cycling. But people, for whatever reason, like can't wrap their mind around doing that. And so I always kind of go back and forth. It's like, and I do this with with life, and then with what we do with coaching and crushing iron. Is like, what would get, and I don't think you're ever going to know in terms of like, in 3 years I want to have achieved this or get us to this. So like, what if I focus on just being pretty good at all, like 3 or 4 things for the next 3 or 4 years? How is it going to look in these 4 years? Or what if I like really, really scale back with training and racing and only focus on coaching, and then what we're doing with the hub and the website and our growth, and do that for like 1 or 2 years, and once I get settled in, then get back to training and see where I get up, and then kind of match them, like mirror, like, where do you get it but 4 years down the road, are they going to be kind of the same, or are they going to be like vastly different? And I go back and forth on that a lot, but I always tend to go back towards, and again, I don't think it's a bad thing in some ways when you can go all in and focus, because I think we've all kind of worked for bosses or had employees in the past where like they've got 55 things halfway done and nothing finished. And people do that with training too. Like they just create busy work, and they like that's one of my biggest. I know there are some master swim programs out there that are good, but that's why I get so like pissed off at when I like read people's master swim workouts. I'm like, wait a minute, you got out of the pool in your master to do 5 push-ups and get back in. You know what that's called? That's called busy work, and it has no purpose. And so when you look at like triathlon and like just fixing things and putting there to stay busy, it's really more of appeasing to your own attention span and just feeling busy. Like, there's a big difference in busy work and getting work done, or working a lot and getting things actually accomplished. And I think that's difficult. I think in terms of how we balance, because again, like that's what our podcast is. It's about, the quote unquote, even though some people would say there's like no such thing as balance, that you can only be really great at like 1 or 2 things and everything else is kind of like has to take a back seat. And I think as you go on with your life and you grow and you mature and things pop in, like 5 years ago, I could put triathlon as my number 1, number 2, outside of Alley. And now it's coaching, work, podcast, being a husband, being a father, like all these things kind of like insert. It's like you have like your triathlon, stone in the front. It's like, this is what I do, this is who I am, this is what I can do, I can all my focus in, and then like all these things start putting in, like kind of like slightly nudge it every few months, and then all of a sudden you look up and you're like, it's not even in your periphery. Like all these things in your life that you've allowed to come in because they're obviously important to you. You look up and you're like, wait a minute, you have to do like a whole 180 to find triathlon. You're like, oh wait a minute, but you've still been acting like it's right in front of you. And I think sometimes, again, like we have to take a step back and understand not just where we are, but who we are. Like we all evolve. Like, again, like at the beginning of this podcast, we were joking about our above ground pool discussions like 6-7 years ago. And then like where we are now, like it's vastly, not only is what we're doing now vastly different, who we are is insanely different. And I think sometimes sometimes it has to be like something big and glaring to understand and realize who we are. Like that always used to be what I associated with like the first couple of years of being sober was, oh, I just don't drink anymore. And now it'd be like 6 years next week, and I can't really put it on that anymore. It's like, oh, I've changed just because I'm a human. It's like because I'm married, because I have kids, or just because I'm changing as a person. Like things become more important to me. People become more important to me. Like, and I think that it's just when you go back to training and you're trying to balance things out, and when you look at your year, and we say this, and I understand this, like from a planning perspective, it's nearly impossible. Right? It's nearly impossible to plan your year. You can plan your races, but you can't plan your life. Life basically plans you. It's just how you respond to it. It's just you can make all your plans that you want to, but life is going to throw curveballs, and you're going to get sick, or you're going to get hurt, or you're going to have bouts of no motivation, or all these things are going to happen. It's about how you react. And then I think again, like when you can have a mindset going into the year of how you choose and how you want to respond, or a list of checks you need to go through in order to make decisions. If you know this year is going to be crazy, and things aren't going to go well, or it's like some athletes that I work with, their parents that have kids who are in like their junior, senior year of high school, and they're like, I know I can't do anything this summer. I can't because we're going on college trips. There's all these things, and some of them are like, this is their last year at home. I don't want to miss anything. I don't want to be training on a Saturday morning for 4 hours when I could be hanging out with my kid who's about to move out of the house and may never move back in. And I think there's so there might not be a list of decisions that you need to make, but I always think there needs to be this time of year. It's really great to kind of reflect, on your training, but also where you kind of see yourself grow. Like everyone likes to, like when they start to work with me as a coach, like they love sometimes to get like these elaborate spreadsheets that I have to get somebody to like decipher for me in terms of like the last like 8 years of race results and PRs and I always tell them like, this is great. Like I love this information. It's fantastic. But to be totally honest with you, the only thing that's super relevant is what you've done the last 4 weeks. Like if you were a sub 120 marathoner or a half marathoner, and that was 6 years ago, and you haven't done much since then it has zero relevance. Because yes, have you been able to get to that? Sure. But what you now have to take into account is, okay, well, what was your life like when you ran that 120? Oh, well, I was single and just in college or just out of college. I worked a 9-to-5 job. And you're like, okay, so you have that ability inside of you. But now let's be honest, you're a little bit heavier. You got a dad bod. You got 3 kids. You're married. You have a very demanding job in which you travel, and you're out of shape. Is it relevant? Zero relevance. And so, like, again, like when you go back and you say, how am I going to decide to do things this year? I think, again, it doesn't have to be on how you don't have to make decisions right now, but I think you have to create emotional and mental checklist of who I really am right now and how I want to support. So like going back to self-care and taking time for ourselves. I think that's how a lot of athletes should look at their year is how can I take care of myself? How can I not overextend myself? How can I make sure I'm not putting too much pressure on myself? Got to qualify for Kona this year. Got to PR this year. Got to make 7.3 World this year. Got to qualify for USAT Nationals this year. I got to go and do a sub 2.5 hour half marathon. I got to break 3:30 in the marathon. I got to be able to get under 2 minutes in the swim. Like instead of like creating thoughts and processes and items that you think through in order to help you make these decisions that obviously, hopefully, put you, Mike Tirali, me, Robbie Bruce, John Smith, put them as a human being first, as a father, as a husband, as a person, as an athlete, and then as a triathlete, instead of every decision I have to make has to be identified as what's going to best suit Mike Tirali, the guy that's done 7 straight years of Ironman. He's got to do one this year, and if he can't, what the hell is he going to do? Instead of like, all right, what can I do to fit in the Mike Tirali of right now who has all these different passions and all these different commitments and responsibilities and avenues that he wants to place his energy? How can we support that? And I think that's one of the toughest questions we can ask ourselves. And again, one of the biggest reasons that people find value in having a coach is that you have someone to support you through the bad workouts, through the bad weeks, through the up and downs, through the through the weeks and weeks and weeks, like where you might not have motivation. Like I think I've told this story, but there's a athlete that I've worked with over 2 years, who, when we started working together, and she'll know exactly who she is, and we would have a few weeks that were good, we'd have a few weeks that were bad. We'd have a few weeks that were good, and we'd have a few weeks that were bad. And then we go through like sometimes 3 or 4 weeks with like zero training. And you hop back in, you put another week in, and you kind of tell, all right, let's see what can happen this week. Let's see what can happen this week. Let's see if we can start, as I was famously quoted by one of my other athletes, is let's just keep trying to get our shit together. And then finally we'll get it together. And all of a sudden, and again, had nothing to do with me, zero. And all of a sudden, just something clicked. And she maybe over the course of like 8 months, like maybe missed like 3 or 4 workouts. Her mindset changed, her persona changed, everything changed. And she rattled off a 70.3 in a full Ironman, and it was remarkable. But I think you have to be flexible in that time and not be so hard on yourself as well.
Mm. Well, as you were talking, I was thinking about, like, regarding you or me or anybody that's in this similar position and thinking about doing a race. And, I've thought obviously about doing races next year, and I keep thinking to myself, but for me, what I do when that switch flips, that means that I have to go out and, in my definition, be great. So, like, when we think about being great, and we're bombarded by it all the time. You can be great. You can do anything you want, all that kind of stuff. And, all these people, and everywhere you look, it's something like, follow your dreams and go for this and this and this. And, for me to sign up and do a half just to enjoy it, you know what I mean? Like, just to go out and kind of go through I really, it's almost like I have to get my mind wrapped around the idea that I'm really going to go for it. Or if for some reason it's just not as pleasurable, or at least, I don't know. But I think as I can figure out more of a balance, and I think somebody was recently saying there's no such thing as balance, but I think that there's something like that, and it's basically nurturing yourself within different, arenas of life, and how you can move back and forth in that, so it's like, how do you transition from being an artist to a triathlete one day, and then back to being a husband and a father or whatever? How do you do that, and I think that all is about sort of being your own Sherpa and just being confident in who you are.
Ooh, I like that. There's a shirt.
Be your own Sherpa.
Be your own Sherpa. Yeah, I mean, it's true though. Like you have to be your own. I mean, yes, you need support, right? Like it's a value. Like you're a huge support influence in my life. Allie is obviously one as well. It's like you need that support, but at the end of the day, like, it's all on you, baby. It's all on you. And if you don't choose to do that, then, like, that was one of the biggest things that when I was getting sober, was like, you can't get sober for anybody else but yourself. Because at some point that those other people might vanish, or they might never forgive you, or they might not be involved in your life. So then what if they disappear or pass away? What are you then going to be left with? An identity of sobriety that is attached to someone else, instead of doing things because you're worth it and you deserve to be the person that you're meant to be, and to make these positive changes and do the work associated with it because you just want to. And, like, again, like, I don't want to say trying to be great is overrated, because I don't necessarily think that it is, but I do agree that everybody's like, oh, you just, be great. How hard being great is? It's like impossible. It's like, I'm not trying, like, I get it, like, but like, trying to be a parent, it feels like it's impossible to be great, because, like,
I can't imagine, dude.
Like,
the pressures of every decision.
Like last night, like whenever I get back from a trip or like a camp, like, yeah, it's a vacation, quote unquote, but it's also super exhausting, and I'm always a little bit extra irritable, and Allie always reminds me I'm extra irritable. And I told her one night, and I was like, you know what, I said, this was like Tuesday, I was like, I've been a really crappy husband and a crappy dad today. And instead of being like, you know what, I'm going to be the best husband and father tomorrow ever, it was like, I just got to get some sleep, and I got to be more patient, and I got to just kind of get my act together. And the next day, obviously I've been better since, but it had nothing to do with being great. Because I can tell you what, I'm rarely ever great at either one of those things. But like last night, like if you want to be reminded of how non-great or how fickle the world is, like imagine parenting a 3-year-old toddler and their attitude and personality. Like last night, we get into bed, and this is 2 nights ago, and he was getting in bed. I was putting him down, and he looked at me and he said, "Daddy," he said, "I love you, and I'm sorry about doing this thing earlier." And I was like, man, I was like, for as many times I feel like I absolutely suck as a parent and I've got it all wrong, I was like, these are the times that I feel like I'm doing it right. And I said this to him, and in the middle of telling him that, he like totally dissociated, like I was even speaking, and like started to play with toy, and started playing with toy, and he looks at me, and he goes, "Daddy, leave me alone." And I was like, see, this is it, baby. This is life. This is you think you're one thing in a minute, and the next thing your life's like, "Hey, dude, slow your roll, man. You ain't that great. You ain't got it all together." And I was like, "This." And Allie and I just started both dying laughing. And obviously, like parents with kids of any age really can relate to that. But it was just such a good reminder of like, you know what? It just kind of is what it is. Like you just got to be the best that you can be, and like the version, the definition, or what society projects and displays and attaches to images or whatever else, like that the best and what great is. Dude, some days my best is just like staying in my PJs and working my butt off even though I don't feel good. And that is like, that's training, and that is life, and that is relationships, and that is whatever. It's owning up to mistakes. It's being accountable. It's recognizing that when you suck, and it's also understanding that when you are pretty good, you need to understand why you're pretty good. Because the next time that you suck at something, that you feel like you failed at something, or you feel like motivation isn't there, if you don't have something to rely back on, that's not an identity, but it's just something that you've recognized. Like for me, it's always sleep, and it's how I start my day, and it's if I'm making time for myself. Like, well, I had lunch with Allie, and I was like, I really need you to make sure and tell me and hold me accountable to make sure that I do something for myself every day, to put myself first, for even if it's like a 30-minute span, to put myself first and be selfless with myself, or as you would say, be my own Sherpa, and take care of myself. Because if you don't take those times, and again, like I think that's why people get more depressed or more down or more lost when triathlon takes a back seat, is that we do have this like super all-in mentality that if it's not 16 hours a week, it might as well just be 0.
Yeah.
But the self-care part of it, that like the fact that we take time for ourselves and we do things for ourselves, like that's the value. That's the stuff that has nothing to do with race results, but everything to do with who you are as a person, as someone who's a human who lives in a world that is just chaos, who is trying to find a balance between relationships and business and work, and taking time and what that time looks like, and not comparing yourself to others, and changing expectations, and just being confident with like what you got, you know. And I just think that we forget that is self-care. And doesn't have to be associated with an interval workout or a green and training peaks. Like, go for a hike, walk with your spouse, take your kids for a bike ride. Don't even do that. Just like hang. Like one of the athletes that I worked with last night, he was like, "You know what, man?" He's like, "I totally needed that day off. I laid on the couch and watched PJ Masks with my son, and it was the best thing ever." That's not doing anything, but it's also selfless and self-care, and that's the kind of stuff that fills your cup. And being a Sherpa, as you said for yourself, is about filling your own cup. And obviously doing stuff for other people is a way of filling that cup. And I think it's a huge conversation. I think we've obviously negative split this podcast. But I think it's important. I do. I wish that you and I know struggle with this a lot in terms of the making time for ourselves and self-care sometimes, and you know, not being hard on ourselves. And I think that everyone does that. And I think that, you know, anytime we can show ourselves a little more grace as just people and not triathletes, you know, that it's a hobby. It's like you have a job that takes up much more, like significantly more time in your life, that provides income for your family, that provides stability. And you don't walk around being like, well, you know, I can't do that today because I'm an accountant. Like, the amount of pressure we put behind putting ourselves like an endurance athlete, a marathoner, an ultra runner, a triathlete, a 7 point, whatever it is, an Ironman, like you are Mike to Raleigh first. I am myself, and then I am a father and a husband, and then being a triathlete and even a coach is like a very distant third or fourth. And we sacrifice that, and we get those out of order so often that I think oftentimes, and this is a great time to do it, is to recategorize your life and recategorize where triathlon. It doesn't have to change in terms of its level of importance. It doesn't have to change in terms of your focus and your goals and what you want to do performance-wise, in this next year, or 2021, whatever it is. But I think that in order to put yourself first, because to be honest with you, and you said it, like when you go all in, you don't necessarily put yourself first. Because there are days you don't want to train and you do. There are days that you're so tired that you're grumpy, but you still go run and ride. That's more for the goal than it is self-care. And in order to be able to I always tell athletes that are married, like this time of year, you want to save what I would call your spousal credits. You don't want to be going on these like long weekend rides. Like you want to save those for crunch time. You want to save those for like the last 5 or 6 weeks. Like if you get an Ironman in September, don't be telling your wife in April you need to be heading out for 5 hours easy on a Saturday, leaving her with 3 kids at home. Don't be doing that. Save those spousal credits. And the same could be said for anyone in any kind of relationship or non-relationship or single or whatever it is. This is a time of year to save your Sherpa credits and show yourself self-care, put yourself first, know that's okay to do that, and you're not like, who cares if you're less of a triathlete for something if you're more of a human and you're a better person because of it. Like that's the question you should always ask yourself. Am I choosing to be a better human or a better husband, a better father, a better man, better wife, better mom, whatever it is? Or on the other side, is this only to make myself a better triathlete? And those are, and again, this isn't like the easiest way to take 5 minutes off your Olympic time. These are always hard discussions, and oftentimes like questions that we don't necessarily have a concrete answer to. But and I think that's important to know for anyone that's like listening, is that we don't have concrete answers to basically anything. We just have,
yeah, I know.
That's a great sell. It's just like we just give our experience and let you figure it out on yourself if it does apply or it doesn't apply. Take bits and pieces if you want. And yeah, there's like a lot of things that are important in terms of like training that I stand by. But again, like we're all different and our life is different, and you have to kind of take it with a grain of salt.
Yeah, but we don't. And I swear I've been lately trying to put my focus a little bit more on the absurdity of life in general. Just because, like, it takes a lot of pressure off me because there's so many weird things going on. As we talk, if you want to go all in on triathlon, you start looking up things, and the next thing you know, it's like you find somebody that does that, and you follow that pattern. But you also want to kind of be like Gary Vaynerchuk or one of these guys that, just nonstop social media guy and like really making it happen and living life and designing your life resume and all these sorts of things. So you want to do that too. And then you want to be the best husband and the best father and the best wife and whatever. That's a lot of stuff, man. And I just kind of like every once in a while step back and laugh at how like crazy we can get.
Yep.
It's like, what are we trying to do? You're plowing through life without even looking around. I know people right now that are like nonstop refreshing Twitter to see what's going on with this impeachment stuff, like all day. And it's like, what are you doing? Like
what? Hey, you don't gotta tell me. It's the last thing on my.
I know, but it's just, you know what I mean. It's like so many things can get in your head so easily now, and these are why like things like putting the phone down or like what Rich Roll's talking about. I mean, that's like it's in some ways it feels a little extreme. It feels like I just signed up for a new race. Hey, I'm going to do this. I'm going to go, or Jesse Itzler, I'm going to go live with monks now. It's like, if you can have the right perspective on it, I think it's good, but like, lately I've been wondering, because we went to camp and it's just so easy to sit around and munch, and I was like plowing down a bunch of cookies and stuff, and I always have in the back of my, I know that I eat too much sugar, for my mental state of mind and focus and stuff like that, instead of like completely eliminating it and breads and everything like that. I just like yesterday. Oh, by the way, I had one piece of bread, and that was pretty good for me. And I wanted to bring up that. It was like, what was that thing about the rye bread that you brought up? He comes walking into the kitchen. He goes, "Is that rye bread?" And he looks at me like I'm some kind of upper cruster or something.
Listen, man. When I used to work in the hospitality industry at various restaurants, like rye bread was something that only the older population ordered. It was. I'm just telling you, man. It was like
it was older thing.
I'd like a half scoop of chicken salad on some rye bread, or have it with their cup of soup. I'm just saying, anyway.
Oh, I thought, okay.
You just don't see it that much, but you're a man after your own lifestyle. And if rye bread's part of your lifestyle, then I support that rye bread.
Well, I only had one piece, and it wasn't that, it's like, because I think even just cutting all that stuff out adds a whole nother layer of pressure. It's like, God, just let yourself have a little something. Moderate.
Go out, guys, and get yourself a little something.
So, we're signing up for races. Is that what we're doing now?
No, I'm not. No, we gotta wrap this one up. I got a couple gray hairs trying to beat down the door to this conference room.
Let's push the limit. These people are absurd. They're going to go in there. You should sit in with them. Like Kramer did.
Sit in with them. Yeah, they're like, who's this like homeless guy in our conference room? It's like it's on one of the fancier floors of the building. There's like a political agency across the hall.
See, that's funny to me.
And this is a giant boardroom. It's got like seating for like 30. And here I've got there looking at some dude with like long sleeve shirt on and sweatpants and flip flops and 40-degree weather. And I'm thinking, I'm surprised they haven't asked security to come up here. Like, who is this guy in our building? In a t-shirt of all things on a Thursday. But hey, it is Thursday, and this was our podcast. But we do appreciate you joining us. We hope you got something out of it. If you haven't ever been, visit what is our current but soon to be old website, crushingiron.com. Check it out. It's got info on coaching, training, swim analysis, our club, gear, you name it, it is there. It's our one-stop shop for all things. And if you don't see anything on there, you have questions about what you see or don't see, you can email Mike, crushingiron@gmail.com, or you can always reach out to me directly as well, C26coach@gmail.com.
Okay, buddy.
Go get you some rye bread, homie.
I will, man.